All right, here with Cory Freeman. Welcome. Really excited about sitting down and chatting because Cory is a blast from the past, somebody that I've known for a long time, but we knew each other for a brief stint whenever I was younger playing baseball. He was a coach of mine, and in a way, I'll tell a quick story about him because of how it impacted my life, because I didn't have many coaches that were that philosophical, and I felt like Cory, at least back then, was he had a way of with words and like almost because he did some rapping and stuff like that we might get into here in a little bit. But
now we're going old school.
I know, right? But it was very much like I remember during one of the games you wrote down this like poem almost about how the effort wasn't there and how whenever you give effort, like these things happen. And so it was very inspirational in a way back then. And this is not just like a, hey, let me suck up. This is like a, hey, you're a 16-year-old, very impressionable mind. Right. Even though you're not that much older than me, it was viewed as like, hey, you are older, you're in a position of power. And so I took that like, oh man, this guy knows what he's talking about, whether you did or didn't, right? I took it that way. And it was something that I was molded based on your thoughts, not only because of you, because you were real good friends with Tim Lamont, and I respected Tim. Absolutely. I still have a heck of a lot of respect for Tim Lamont. And so, so welcome to the podcast, man. I'm super excited about this. We're going to cover tons of topics. The podcast is about entrepreneurship and real estate and anything business, basically. And this guy's done a lot. And so I'm super excited to talk to you about the financial side, about the real estate side, and about where you're at now and in your franchises and all that. So welcome to the podcast, my man.
Hey, thanks for the nice words.
Hey, of course, man.
You know, it's definitely interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah.
Got a couple different stories. Let's see if I can bring it together.
Sure.
You know, you say I made an impact. You know, of all my days of, playing sports and being around a lot of athletes, you're the only person, and this is not sucking up on mine, you're the only person that I ever looked out on the field and thought, that's me.
Really?
Just intensity game, put me anywhere on the field.
Yeah.
I'd take 9 of you and 9 of me, and we'd go play any sport that anybody wanted to play because at the end of the day, we were always going to be competitive.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting that you say that because the other day, stories come up sporadically about me and how I played and my temper on the field. And a lot of times, like my temper.
How many games did I get thrown out of when I was coaching?
No doubt. Absolutely. That's the thing. And so I was telling a story to my wife and then a couple buddies of mine, and they were saying, why were you like that? And I told them, this is years later, by the way. I didn't think of this whenever I was 18 or think of it this way. But years later, now at 36, I look back and say, I wouldn't have changed one bit because I got thrown out of the same games. Yep. I got in scuffles. But what I told them was, listen, if I wasn't that way, I wasn't athletic enough to make up for it. Yeah, so I had to be.
Both of us were relatively undersized. We didn't have these God-given talents. We were 6'2", 185 natural coming out of the gate.
Right.
It's just I had to work harder. I had to hustle, and if it came down to you or me, it wasn't a hard decision I was going to make.
Yeah, for sure. Well, absolutely, and that was my deal the whole time. And honestly, I could be friends with you after the game, but I took that mentality of during the game, hey man, if we got to fight,
we got to fight.
We got to fight. Which is crazy to think about now, a little bit older, but in the same sense, business is that same way. But I don't take it to that extreme now.
Have you changed?
I've changed a lot. I think I mellowed out quite a bit. Actually, I know I mellowed out whenever I was in college, in junior college. I wish that I had my junior college experience over again, and because ultimately, I think that I thought that I was better than I was. And so I didn't think that I was getting due credit in high school, to where after high school, I was like, I'm not going to play anymore. Right. And I was like, and to me, I thought that I was so good and my ego was so high. When my ego got hit like that, in a way, I kind of folded. And I was like, maybe I'm not as good as I am, so I need to take my ego down. So I'm not as aggressive as I used to be. There's no doubt about that. I wish I was more, but then I also think, you know what, I'm probably a better person than I was back then too. Back then I brushed a lot of people off, and I was like, okay, like you're over there, you're not in a good spot, but I've got to keep doing this. So I protect myself. And now I'm like, well, let me see if I can help them, whereas before I wouldn't have done that at all.
Yeah. I finally had to figure out the just
For
really,
better or for worse, by the way. It's
it's
undecided whether that's the better way or worse way to do things in my mind, but I'm not sure.
I still get to the point of blackout stars competitiveness.
Really?
Just a certain level of intensity that I can't control.
Yeah.
Took me a long time to recognize that it was just me.
Right.
Like it made me successful in everything that I've ever done. But it probably hit me 4 or 5 years ago playing club tennis
Right.
with my wife, mixed doubles.
Yeah.
And just yelling, screaming, cussing, slamming rackets. I've got rackets on my garage wall in my workout room
Right.
of just broken rackets.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because everybody around me, when I show up, they're like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
Yeah, here comes
Yeah.
here comes
the
part.
tornado.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you get to that point where, I can't help it.
Right.
But ultimately for me, I quit tennis, I quit golf. I just knew that the only way that I was going to be able to truly handle my temper and my intensity was just to stop playing at that level. And that just meant competition in general.
Dude, but
I
don't
just
you
can't have
miss
fun.
that though? Don't you?
No.
You don't miss. I'm not saying that the temp and wasn't mean to talk about this, but this infatuates me. Like I love this type
Terrible
of stuff.
teammate, John. Like when I really look back, just a terrible teammate.
But okay, so people would say that about the greats.
They would, but it was no different. We got kids.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yours are a lot younger than mine.
Yeah.
And at some point, the level of expectation of perfection, like perfection isn't possible, but perfection is still a goal.
Yeah, sure.
I want to not only be the best that I can be, but do
Right.
it at the highest level possible.
Right.
And at some point, it overwhelmed me.
Yeah.
Like these things are supposed to be fun.
Yeah, sure.
And I just can't do certain things
Right.
and be fun and go like, we're just going to go out here. We're going to have a good time. We're going to hit the tennis ball. We're going to hit the golf ball.
Sure.
It's just not my makeup.
So whenever you're doing a business deal, like do you bring that same intensity? Do you bring that same competitiveness, or is there a gear that switches like, okay, I can't slam the sandwich down or something like that, like is that, or does it still?
No, I think what's very different and what carries over, from just the intensity and the competition standpoint is I'm not afraid to back down from anybody.
Right. Sure.
A lot of people in business hate to, pick up that 3,000-pound phone.
Yeah, no
they
doubt.
hate making that awkward conversation where a deal falls through. There's complications. Nobody wants to have that phone call.
Right.
Part of the reason that made me who I was is I'm just super honest.
Right.
I have no problem. Let's address the situation. People always respect you for looking them in the eye and saying, hey,
Yeah.
things went sideways or I feel like you're trying to screw me.
Right.
I'm going to be the first one to stand up for myself, look in the eye and say, hey, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, no doubt.
And that part has always carried over and made me successful. I'm just not afraid of anybody.
Right.
I'm going to stand my ground at all points in times.
Right. So on that same note, whenever you in the past a deal was going south, what was your mindset as far as like, I've got to pick up this phone? There's never a doubt like I'm just going to pick it up, I'm just going to do it? Like is that like, or it's like I have to do this now, I'm going to do it, or I have to do this, I'm going to either do it now or later.
Correct.
So you just,
the later's worse.
right.
And in my
then it festers. And then
and in my former business, we had so many people that we were doing business with.
Yeah.
So to give you kind of dive into, my background.
Yeah, okay. So give me your story. Give me the Cory Freeman from really start from 16 and then because you don't have to spend a long time on that, but start from 16 and
we'll transition.
Because I think that shapes us, by the way. Like I think that your high school years shape your later on years for better or for worse. I think so.
It's weird as a kid. Because you get a lot of input and you get a lot of advice from adults.
Yeah, sure.
And I think at some point from 16 to 18, you think you know it all. I was never that kid.
Okay.
I was a know-it-all in a lot of other respects,
Yeah.
but I always took the time to listen to certain people.
Okay.
So really life-changing moment for me is my dad was an attorney. Used to have lunch with an SMU economics professor. One day he walks in and he says, hey, I was having lunch with an SMU economics professor. And he said, hey, my son's 16. What do you think he ought to do for a living?
Yeah.
And his answer to my dad was he should learn how money moves.
Okay.
My dad come home and, whether he just thought it was in passing or whatever, something with me immediately clicked. Little did I know that was going to be the driving force going forward.
Right. Money. Or how money moved.
No, just money.
Yeah,
and
money,
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Because anybody that says...
I can't wait for this.
Anybody that says money is the root of all evil doesn't have money.
Well, and I agree.
The problems
with that.
change.
Yeah.
Things are different. But the majority of marriages, the majority of family issues within the household, revolve around finances.
Right.
People that can survive that and still love each other and come through the other side, much respect to them because it's very difficult.
Right.
We'll get to that too.
Yeah.
But at 18, just to kind of give you a little bit more background, I'm at a girl's house. We're having a high school party, doing whatever high school kids do at a party. There's probably 25 kids, and it's me sitting on the back patio with the mom and dad. Mom's a bond trader. Dad's a stock trader.
Right.
Everybody else is doing whatever high school kids do, and I'm on the patio with the two adults having conversations about the market. What do they do for a living?
Right.
I've always been more mature for my age and always interested, in what other people have to give.
And that's another thing that we can touch on, or that I can touch on about you, is I'll never forget this. So we were in Arizona at a baseball tournament. You were the coach, or you were one of the coaches.
AAU National Championship,
That's
buddy.
it, man. That's it. Food poisoning. I don't know if you remember that.
I do. Got thrown out of my last game.
Yep. Yes, you
Walked
did.
back to the hotel.
Yes.
Gave one of the more memorable post-game speeches.
In a hotel room.
In a hotel room.
I remember that like it was yesterday. But I remember I remember a lot about that trip. But one other thing I also remember was you enforcing or reinforcing the need to read. Yep. Which I don't know if you still believe that or not, but
40 books a year.
So
now it's Audible though.
Sure. And I'm with you on that. Or I don't read as much as I should, but I remember we were walking to the team van and you were like, you need to be reading these books because I'm going to make $100,000 one day. Like that's my goal, is what your goal is.
Did I say that?
You said that 100%. I'm going to make $100,000 by the time, I don't remember what the time frame was, but you said,
so you want to hear the,
I'm going to make $100,000, which is, back then for me was like, that's a lot of money. I think that my dad was probably making somewhere around that at that time, but I was like, that is a lot of money.
Best and worst day of my professional career early on.
Really?
I'll never forget. It was late August.
Yeah.
Picked up the phone, called the wife. I said, hey, got some good news, got some bad news. Mm-hmm. She's like, all right, what's the good news? I said, I hit $100,000.
Okay.
Right. Like this lifelong goal. I told you about it, probably 28, 29, somewhere in that range.
That's when you hit it.
She said, what's the bad news? Mm-hmm. I said, the two guys that I'm working for, one's already made $1.2 million and the other's made $1.4. Yeah. So my $100,000 in like just a flash moment of this should have been like this super proud moment that as a young professional you're building up to turned out to be just the total kick in the nuts, punch in the face. Like this ain't shit. Like there's a long way to go. There's other opportunities that are in front of you. Just keep doing what you're doing.
It's interesting that because $100,000 in the grand scheme of things is very little money, but it's also a lot of money to somebody.
Depends on
your
lifestyle.
It depends on your lifestyle. But I will agree, and I haven't been making it for a long time, but I'll say this. I thought that it was more. And maybe it was more 10, 15, 20 years ago. But I thought whenever I made $100,000 that I was going to be rich. And that's definitely not the case. Now, I didn't have somebody that was making 1.1 and 1.2. But I thought that $100,000 meant that I could do whatever, whenever. And little did I know that I had less money after making $100,000 than I did whenever I was making $50,000. Right?
And so, John, that was very interesting. So kind of transitioning. So 18, 22, go to University of North Texas, graduating. My dad, for all his infinite wisdom, always had this line: "It's not what you know, it's who you know."
Yeah, no doubt.
I've kind of morphed that over the years into my, tell me where I need to go, and I'll tell you who I need to know.
Oh, dude.
So a little bit different. So at that point, I just took a job at a car dealership selling cars. I was the worst car salesman on the planet for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
If somebody comes in and says they want a Mustang, I'm not going to sell you a Firebird.
Right.
That's a different car.
Right, yeah.
But, well, I'll save the name. But one of my dad's former interns at his law firm was running a recruiting firm.
Okay.
He's like, hey, I think I got this great investment company, hired a bunch of kids out of college. So took that job. And eventually did that for 4 years, got my certified financial planner license, Series 7, 63, 66, 24, insurance. I mean, it just goes on and on. My wife always joked that it's always one more test.
No doubt.
Always one more test. And then got a weird opportunity to go to work for a real estate investment trust company in Dallas called REITs. Yep. And that's really where life changed for me. Okay. I went from this, just pure salary employee to stepping back at that point. Right. Got a small child under the age of 1, taking less money on the front end to make more money on the back end with commissions.
How old were you then?
So that would have been 2004. Okay. So 27.
27. So to have the wherewithal to take a step back, because that's tough for me, right? The reason why I never went with a Keller Williams or a Ebby Holiday is because I didn't want to give up my commission. I do think that I would have gotten trained a little bit better, and I think that my real estate career would have been a little bit faster. still working out, but I think that I would have gotten trained a little bit better. But I didn't want to take a step back and take less money. So to do that, I feel like is something like there's a little bit of wisdom behind that.
Well, you're going to hear it over and over from me.
Okay.
Right. I mean, just the transition, and it's funny because the company that I worked for from 2000 to 2004 was basically a company that helped CPAs learn how to invest.
Okay.
Okay. All sorts of weird personality disorders and orders with CPAs. They just function, think, and operate differently than the majority of us.
No doubt.
So that was a challenge, but I appreciated the 4 years because the CPA was always willing to ask the extra 3 questions. He was always going to ask the question that probably didn't even matter,
right.
but he wanted to know, and he wanted to be able to explain paralysis by analysis to his client just in case some engineer or doctor had some random question. Mm-hmm. But when you look at moving out of that, I asked kind of one of my mentors, at the time, there was really 2 different routes you could go leaving that company. You could go into being a financial advisor, which some of my coworkers would go work for very top producers, kind of take on a junior role and build up through the organization.
Yeah.
Or they went the route which I did, which was basically a financial wholesaler.
Okay.
Financial wholesaler, easiest way I can explain is essentially we're pharmaceutical sales girls.
Okay.
Right. Pharmaceutical sales girl walks into a doctor's office. She's got her drugs. She's trying to pitch the doctor on prescribing the drugs.
Right.
That's essentially what a financial wholesaler was. We've got a product in our bag. We're walking into your financial advisor.
Right.
So anytime you wonder where these products are coming from, how your advisor finds out about it is from guys like me walking in the 3-piece suit.
Dude. Okay. So do you want me to ask questions about that now, or do you want to go? Okay.
Yeah, no.
So
otherwise, I'll just continue rambling.
Well, because here's the thing. I feel like that's why so when COVID started, I had been thinking about pulling my money from Northwestern Mutual on my retirement account, my wife's and mine, for a while because I didn't have control over what they were investing in. And it turns out I didn't probably do it in the right way. I can correct that, but I didn't do it in the right way. But I ended up, because I wasn't going to get that fee, I pulled all of our money out. I know I had to spend taxes and all that stuff, but I pulled our money out because I wanted control of where it was going. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want this product or that product or whatever that they were going to offer me that I didn't feel like was advantageous to me. I felt like it was more advantageous to them. I didn't want the whole life health insurance or life insurance, but I bought some because he was like pushing it. And I feel like that's I'm going to say the whole role, but I feel like it's not a fiduciary agreement in my mind. Whereas like I don't think that he had my best interest. I think that he had his pocketbook in mind whenever he was selling me or pitching me some products. Fair or not?
Oh, well, here's the good news.
Okay.
I'm out of the financial business.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, essentially.
But you had some experience in it. You know about it. You know those people.
Look, I don't want to.
And you don't have to bash them, but
no. It's not bashing. It's just the way that the industry is set up.
Right.
Okay. So
in a way, some people could say that about real estate too.
Yeah, and I'll say it 2 different ways. The smartest financial advisors, the ones that are truly unique, that understand the markets and have the ability to tailor a financial plan directly to you, they may be the smartest guy on the planet, but they have the ability to raise zero income.
Okay.
Right. They just can't go out, stand in front of a crowd, and raise money from investors like yourself.
Right.
Now, the best marketers on the planet who have the ability to go out there and raise the most money, make the most money, all of the above. I used to joke all the time, 99 out of 100 financial advisors I wouldn't give $3 to.
Yes. Okay.
Because everybody's doing the same thing.
Right.
I mean, when I chose my financial advisor, it wasn't that, she was the best financial advisor on the planet at that point. She was just doing something very different than everybody else.
So she wasn't a marketer. Is that what you're saying?
She was not a marketer.
Right. She was one of the better financial advisors.
Now, she's almost a second mom to me.
Right.
I love her, cares about me, cares about my family, super sweet lady, which is important. I mean, I give my dad a hard time because he wants the markets to do what he wants them to do.
Sure.
If the market's up 25%, he wants to be up 25%, but he's not willing to take the risk to be down the same 25%.
Yeah, right.
So you get into this situation where every financial advisor is the same. I don't want to bash on anybody with Edward Jones, but an Edward Jones advisor is going to have basically the same allocation for every single client with very few differences.
Right.
They're taking the financial planning out of an individual's hands, and John Jacobus, his wife and his kid, you're going to get the same thing that everybody else gets.
Doesn't matter.
Whole life.
Right, exactly.
Right. I mean, we could talk about insurance all day. I'm one test away from my COU, which is basically the CFP for insurance.
Right.
Insurance is supposed to, especially at our age, it's supposed to be insurance.
Right.
As a retirement vehicle, Maybe.
Right.
But that's such a long term away, and there's much better uses for your capital in the short term time frame than putting it in a 50-year retirement vehicle based around life insurance, which you're not even getting the maximum death benefit on because it's whole life.
And I wasn't smart enough to know it at that time.
But nobody is.
Right. I mean, so you're talking about people that, and I'm not going to play a victim card here, but,
no.
but it is something where I should have been more educated before I made that decision. I should have educated myself.
The fact that the government won't allow an individual investor to truly have any sort of guidance on their 401k is the scariest thing that I ever dealt with.
Right.
Like you're expecting regular Joe and Mary working in the office who knows what they do with no financial experience about the markets. You hand them, hey, here's your 25 mutual funds that you can pick from. They send somebody in to say, hey, this is what this does. But they have no idea on building a portfolio, but they won't let a financial advisor or someone actively manage that for the most part.
Right.
It's just backwards.
It seems crazy.
And you and I had the conversation earlier. We'll get to my entrepreneurism. And,
yeah, definitely.
I just had this long career, where over time, it wasn't necessarily that I gave up on the financial systems. You just realize that you have no control.
Right.
We have no control over the markets. We have no control over the ebbs and flows. We have no control over oil prices from OPEC and whoever's controlling whatever's happening. But yet that's our retirement model.
For sure. And one decision that somebody makes that you have no association with can wipe out, or one mistake, Enron, or, huge mistake or whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
Can cripple your retirement, something that you worked for your entire life.
Essentially a 20% drop on the market means I need 38 to 40% to recover that same amount.
Exactly.
And whatever volatility existed on the 20% drop is obviously still there.
Yeah.
On the flip side. So there's no telling, it's such an interesting business, especially being, like you said, philosophical, really taking a look at things and thinking about it.
Right.
I really got to this point in life where I'm not sure I believed in what I was doing long term.
Right.
I enjoyed doing the real estate investment trust business because we were on the non-traded side, meaning that there was no market volatility.
Yeah,
we were essentially buying real estate for the purpose of real estate, which is generating income.
Right.
Now, challenge with those products is there was anywhere from a 15 to 20% load that the company took right off top.
Right. Okay. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
And so you went to work for this REIT, right?
Yep.
And how did you apply what you knew before from the financial planning and that sort of thing?
Zero.
So you went in there green, and it was just like, I know that I'm going to be aggressive, that I'm going to do well.
I'm going to pick up the phone, make $100 a day.
You're right, and I'm going to call people.
Yeah, and my territory was Virginia to Maine.
So for people that don't know, and you help me out with this, the explanation, because you'll be able to explain it much more. But essentially, a REIT is something that people can invest in, kind of like the stock market or something. It's an investment that people can pull their money and invest in.
Yeah,
but it's real estate based.
Yeah,
right?
So essentially what we did, and REIT falls into a number of different definitions. I mean, it's just a part of the tax code.
Okay.
So essentially, to keep numbers nice, round, and clean, we would go and we'd file with the SEC to raise $1 billion.
Right.
Now, some REITs have the ability to do everything, but the majority of them, you're going to pick one very specific asset class, and you're going to go out and raise that $1 billion through financial advisors, stockbrokers, and individual clients' assets.
Okay.
Now, what's nice about it is it was for regular investors. So everybody thought, hey, to be an investor in real estate and to own, the Walmart, or to own, 25 CVS's or 100 Walgreens, I need to have this massive amount.
Right.
Minimum investments were $5,000.
Okay.
So it really brought the availability of large-scale real estate, to the average investor. Our average tickets were about $29,000.
Right.
But we were never meant to be this large percentage of a client's portfolio. We were meant to just be this diversification component that sat away from the market, so that regardless of the volatility in the market, and surprisingly enough, when the market went down, real estate might have pulled back, but real estate's one of those asset classes that even if the tenant leaves the space, you still have real estate.
Right.
You still have a physical asset that it still has some, residual value.
No doubt. So whenever you're making these 100 calls a day, who are you talking to?
Just financial advisors.
Okay, that's it. Fine. So you pick up the phone, you've got Northwestern Mutual, you got Edward Jones, whoever, and you're just calling these guys nonstop.
Correct.
Taking no constantly? Or
it was more interesting, being a Texas kid. And I knew for a fact, as you can tell, I'm not a slow speaker.
No.
They put me, in a territory where they thought I could be successful.
Right.
I talk fast, think fast,
Yeah.
and continue to move.
Right.
It was so different being, at that time I was an internal. So I was just the phone guy. Essentially, I was setting appointments for the outside guys who lived and traveled in the territory.
Right.
So as much as we were selling, it wasn't necessarily selling. I used to call it, I was just the door opener.
Right.
And I would tell my guys all the time, look, I open the door, you close it.
Yeah.
Right. That's your responsibility.
No doubt.
And when I became an external wholesaler, that was my responsibility, to the person that spent their time, energy, and effort working for me.
So that's what that transition was, intern to external wholesaler?
Correct.
Okay, and where was your territory from the external wholesaling?
Yeah, so kind of to get back on, our same story, I'm trying to think, it was 2007, so I would have been right at 30. Buddy of mine calls, and he's like, hey, working for Nationwide Insurance, there's an opportunity in Houston to basically go sell variable annuities for Nationwide Insurance. It was weird because this is, it's the major leagues.
Yeah.
It's the major leagues, and, there's certain aspects about the business that I always equated to sports.
Yeah.
And most of the time when someone's going from the minor leagues as an internal wholesaler to the major leagues, there's also difference in levels of teams. Do you get to go to the New York Yankees or do you get to go to the Pittsburgh Pirates?
Right, no doubt.
Right. And so that was an opportunity where Nationwide wasn't the major leagues. It wasn't a major, but it was definitely one of the better teams that I could go work for.
Right.
So not only was I getting the resume bump, what was more interesting, and I had to take a pay cut.
Right. Oh, again.
Had to take a pay cut to take that next step from a professional career move.
Right.
I mean, I had buddies that, call it hate, jealousy, whatever it was, over the years, like, Cory, you just got lucky.
Oh, dude.
And look, I'm fine with that. And I'll go, there's always,
there is luck to it. I do think that there is luck to it. But
I'd rather be lucky than good.
Sure.
I had a former executive at one of my companies said, what's funny is the harder I work, the luckier I get.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
For
sure.
Like I said earlier, I knew the path that I wanted to be on, and I was always networking. Right, I was always trying to figure out who's that next person I need
where
to
you want to
introduce
go.
to myself,
That's who I need to know.
and how do I get there? And once again, it was one of these relationships. Had to pick the family up, move them to Houston. Did that November of 2007. In February, my buddy who has the job here in Dallas calls like, "Man, I got some bad news," and I'm like, "Dude, don't tell me. You brought me over here. You moved the family to Houston, and now the Dallas territory's open up."
Oh.
Bought a house in Houston, and so 4 months later, I'm moving back.
Right.
Daughter was in school in Houston.
Oh, wow, yeah.
That was right around the time where oil went from $139 a barrel to about 35.
Yeah.
That's when I put the house on the market.
Yeah.
And took us 18 months in Houston, where every single neighbor is in the oil and gas business.
Right.
It took us 18 months to sell that house, and great experience.
Yeah, sounds like it. So
But I was terrible at selling variable annuities.
Okay, so So what do you mean by terrible?
Just no passion.
Okay, right. So are you the type of guy that you? So I told my brother this one time. I said, you know what? Like, I'm just a little bit frustrated. This was probably 8 years ago or something like that. I told him, I said, I'm just a little bit frustrated with what I'm doing, where I'm going, where it seems like I'm kind of at right now. He said, I'm making decent money, but like it's just not, whatever. And he was like, John, I'm passionate about making money. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, maybe if I shift my mindset to like, okay, like that's my passion versus passion of building like a real estate business, which I wasn't, like I was kind of wavering at that time. Then maybe that can put me on my right track. I just need kind of that jolt. And ultimately I feel like that got me back on track. Let me just shift my mindset from passion about building this business, which I really wasn't, to something I am passionate about, which is the reward, right?
One of the corniest things that anybody ever says, if you wake up every day and you enjoy doing what you're doing, it's not really work. That's bullshit.
Okay.
Because it's still work.
Right. Yeah,
right. If there was an opportunity to make the amount of money that I was making and stay at home and do nothing,
you would have done
Plan B.
Well, and that's I tell people this all the time because, again, loved baseball, but ultimately baseball, even if you're in the big leagues, you're playing 162 days and nights a year. That means you're traveling on some off days. Every night you're busy. It becomes an absolute grind. And so I tell people, man, that's work, right? But they're playing a game. They're making so much money. It's work, right?
I played 58 games in college, and by the end of the season, I couldn't lift my arm.
Right, yeah, you were done.
I was done. There's no way I was going to be able to play 100 games at any level.
It becomes more of a job than it is anything. Even though it's a game, it's fun, but it transitions at some point, whether it's junior college, whether it is professionally, whatever, when you're getting paid for it, it becomes
it's
work,
different.
right? And so even if I love baseball, it's my favorite thing to do, at some point, I'm going to look at it as work because now I have to do this, right? And so I have to do this to make money, or I have to do this to whatever. And so I couldn't agree with you more that it's not, if you wake up in the morning and you love what you do, then you're never going to work a day in your life. If I could find something like that, then I would love it. But I don't think that there's anything truly out there.
Yeah.
That
So
I could do.
my challenge at, and it's funny because, at just weird times in life, the more successful I become, the more humble I become.
Okay.
The more you really start to look back and say, man, someone really gave me an opportunity. They opened the door and it was up to me, to close.
Right.
Before we get to, doing what I'm doing, I told my wife something recently, and she's like, are you serious? I said, this is the first time in my life doing the entrepreneur thing that I've ever been truly proud of myself.
Okay.
I've never had time to consider it.
Right.
Because everything that I've done in my life, I was supposed to do.
Right.
Mentally, I expected to be successful. I expected to excel. That was just it. That was my mindset. But this is such a different path, that this is truly created with my bare hands.
With what from me. Right. And if it fails, you get to blame you.
Yeah. And I love that.
Right.
You know.
Do you think that this, kind of going back a little bit, do you think that this, like the work mentality that you have, do you think that that was instilled in you by your parents, or you think that you were born with that, or like where do you think that came from?
Man, great question.
Yeah.
I think a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I saw my dad wake up every day, work hard. Grandfather was a concrete man. Great grandfather was a ditch digger before the days of backhoes.
Right. Yeah.
Literally he and his buddies shoveling for the city.
Right.
So I think you always saw the level of work. My dad being the first generation college graduate, started to instill a little bit of a different mindset.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, talking about mowing the lawn. He's like, hey, that's why you go to college.
Sure. Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, sure.
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't share that complete opinion at this point because I'm someone that just likes to be busy.
Right.
YouTube has been the greatest creation on the planet because I can almost figure out how to do anything.
Anything. Yeah.
Right. It's just up to me and whether I want to.
Right.
The baseball deal and just sports in general. Like if I found a passion, I was talking with my buddy Todd the other day, I'm just all in or all out.
Right.
There's no middle ground for me on anything.
Right.
My parents, growing up from probably 13 to 18, I took one of those yellow pitching machine dimple balls. My parents had a brick mailbox. They had to replace that brick mailbox 3 times because I would literally sit out there for an hour and a half a day banging that thing off a 2-foot wide brick mailbox. And eventually when you beat the mailbox in, there was no way to get it out except to take all the bricks down and rebuild the mailbox.
Yeah.
But my parents never got mad.
Right.
Because I was constantly out there
working,
doing what I enjoy doing.
And so that was kind of like them teaching or them letting you do something that you were passionate about. Is that how you feel like they taught you, hey, he's out there working. I don't want, just because he's destroying the mailbox, I don't want to say, hey, don't do that, because he's still out there working. Like you're still out there putting in time.
I would never give credit to my parents for my work ethic.
Okay.
I mean, I just don't think that work ethic is something that you can truly teach.
Right.
You can instill and you can have the conversation, but it's still up to that individual to get out there and do whatever's necessary.
So you're a mindset guy.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I'm singularly focused at the task at hand.
Right.
Lots going on in the brain, but when I get singularly focused, on what I need to accomplish, I'm willing to pull in from all directions. But the goal doesn't necessarily change that much.
So when you say you're singularly focused, like the world is like, you're focused on building your current business. We'll go into that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're focused on building your business. Literally, the world's falling apart over here.
And it is.
And it is. But you're saying like, hey, I'm not worried about that. Even if, like, at what point, I guess, as I'm rambling here, at what point am I saying, okay, this is about to affect me, but I'm so focused on this, I don't even see that it's about to affect me, right? Like, how does that work? Because I'm somebody that there's so many times where I want to be singularly focused, but everything's going on around distracting me, and so I'm not focused on what I need to focus on. So how do you say, okay, even if this does affect me, I'm not going to let it, or I'm just going to stay in my lane?
Well, I mean, still how many lanes?
Well, it's
I can be singularly focused on 6 different lanes.
sure. Just
Right. It's just at the moment where I need the singular focus dedicated to this particular project that I'm working on.
Right.
That's the only thing.
so time blocking, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
From 8 to noon, like this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. I had a sales coach. So let's do this. So I'm at Nationwide.
Okay.
Get a phone call from another real estate company.
Okay.
Just didn't have the passion working at Nationwide because our product wasn't the best. And when the financial advisor would say, hey, this product over here is better, you would sit there and go, you're right, and you should probably keep selling that.
Right,
As a salesperson, you'd almost get pity tickets.
For sure.
Where the financial advisor's like, Cory, I really like you. And a lot of things that people would say is, hey, I can't wait till you're, at a better spot. And you've got, the product that I'm willing to sell because I can't wait to really work with you.
No doubt.
So I got a call from a company that I won't name. If you're really good at Google searches and FINRA searches, you can find out.
Okay.
But basically got a call from a company out of the blue. My brother was still in the real estate business, so I call him like, hey, tell me about company ABC. And he's like, why do you want to know? Because he knows I'm nowhere close to the real estate business at this point. I'm off doing insurance. Mm-hmm. And I said, because I just got a call, for potential job opportunity. And he says, really? I'm like, yeah. He goes, Cory, I just heard him speak at a conference last week. If they can do half of what they say they're going to do, they're going to dominate the entire industry. And so essentially this was some very slick-suited guys from New York, fair bit of capital coming into a business that they'd never been in before.
Right.
And they really just went out and put together one of the best sales teams I've ever been a part of, but it was also like-minded individuals. Mm-hmm. It was a bunch of young guys. It was a bunch of seasoned professionals, but it was everybody with a little bit of chip on their shoulder who worked hard, was willing to do whatever was necessary. That job was really the first time that I considered that I was selling my soul to the devil for money.
Okay.
It wasn't from a religious standpoint.
Sure.
It was just the amount of work that was necessary to get that job done and be successful. Mm-hmm. There were no work hours.
Right. It was all the time.
It was all the time. Mm-hmm. Somebody wanted you to do an event on a Saturday or Sunday. The answer was absolutely yes.
Yeah.
Management, looking back on it, not terrible, but they definitely live by that philosophy that, foot in the ass is necessary.
Sure. Is that where...
It was never the carrot. It was always the stick. And after 5 years of being...
Say that again.
It was never the carrot.
Yeah.
It was always the stick.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Just the constant beratement.
Right.
And it just got to a point, John, after 5 years, you're on a Friday conference call, and you know what the Friday conference call is going to be. I mean, we're raising $1 billion a month.
Right.
At some point we started out, we just wanted to raise $1 billion for the year, and now we're doing $1 billion a month, and that's not good enough.
Right. Yeah. There's always another goal.
So you'd be on a conference call, and you've just got somebody yelling in your ear. Everybody's having career years. Everybody's making more money than they ever could have imagined. Mm-hmm. And you've still got somebody in your ear yelling at you that you're not doing enough.
Do more. Yeah.
And you just, no.
So at what point in those 5 years were you like, this isn't what I'm wanting to do? Never. No.
The amount of money that was on the table at that point, we all got to that mindset that this thing is, we're all gonna ride this thing. I mean, that was the conversation amongst all of us. But we also knew that as fast and hard charging in this company was, it was probably going to go down very quickly.
Okay.
And it did. About 18 months for the first issue, 18 months before, and then about 2 months before, they just woke up on December 4th of 2015 and said, hey, appreciate it. This thing's done.
Really?
Literally shut the doors, 6 offices around the country, 400 employees, just shut the doors.
Wow.
And walked away. But keep in mind, we'd also built, $15, $16 billion worth of real estate portfolios that they still owned and they still managed at 1.75%.
Right.
Do the math.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
So now they didn't have to pay sales guys. We'd already raised the capital. We'd taken 6 companies public.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was that? I mean, what was that whole experience like? Because I would imagine it was you got in fairly early, right? Am I correct? Or
probably first year.
First year. Okay.
Yep.
So what was it like those 5 years from were you literally just ignoring, talking about singularly focused? I mean, that was all you did.
That's really where the selling the soul to the devil for money
came in.
Before I ever took my first external job, I had a mentor that I truly loved. He came into town with his wife for a holiday party. Mm-hmm. And, I'm the internal, he's the external, he's the one making the big bucks. So he and his wife invite me and my wife to dinner.
Right.
A little bit of sabotage because I told him, I'm like, hey, I really need you and your wife to really tell my wife and explain to her what this job really is.
Right.
Because it's very easy for a spouse to look at it and go, oh, there's the ability to make this. Right.
Right.
And then, my wife, just like anybody else, is like, okay, we're living in this house.
Yeah.
We could be in this house. We can drive this. Life continues to move forward.
Right.
And, they sat her down and just kind of explained that this is a hard charging business. It's
you'd
early
be able
mornings,
to do that, but
early mornings, late nights, weekends. And it definitely was. And it was a lot of time, away from the kids.
Right. Do you believe in work-life balance?
So I think I was about to mention sales coach.
Okay. Yes.
So I had a sales coach that was working with one of my former bosses and still somebody I'd consider to be best friend, mentor, just an incredible guy. So he puts me on to this sales coach. And really, John, it was funny because this guy was working with 6 or 7 of us at this same company.
Okay.
And it was very bizarre because I'd worked with sales coaches before, and it was very much driven on, hey, here's the goals, right? Here's what we want to set from a quarterly goal standpoint. Here's the 10 steps that it's going to take to get to those goals. And hey, next week on our sales call or our sales coaching call, we're going to, and that stuff just bores me. I'm not a planner.
Okay.
I'm just a doer.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I know what needs to be done. I don't need 10 things written on a sheet of paper because then if I don't get 2 of them accomplished, then I'm going to feel like I'm a total failure and I didn't. So
Right.
I work differently.
Right.
But this gentleman was more than a sales coach. He ended up really just being a business psychologist.
Okay.
And he knew the company.
Yeah.
He knew the people. He knew ownership. And he really he was constantly preaching work-life balance.
Okay.
And it was the first time, probably 2014. He's like, Cory, when was the last time you said no to somebody? Never.
I haven't.
No, right. No was never the answer. Right? There was an opportunity in front of me, opportunity to do business. What was keeping me back?
Right.
And ultimately, it probably started the transition, to where you get to where it was the first time I'd ever really, and, maybe this makes me a terrible father at times, but I just wasn't looking at, hey, what am I missing?
Right.
Wife's a superstar. She's the glue that holds everything together. She's got this.
Right.
Right? We're a mile from my parents. Her parents are 30 minutes. Like,
Yeah. Right.
the support structure is in place where they have this.
Right.
And I wasn't considering that, hey, on Thursday I'm missing the school play or, I'm missing this or I'm missing that.
Right.
It just never really factored into my mind just because this was the sacrifice that I was willing to make
Right.
for the family.
Okay. And at that time, exactly like that stole my question there. You were making those sacrifices in your mind, maybe for your wife, for your
Correct.
kids. And so your mind,
It's an old school mentality.
yeah, you're thinking, hey, I'm the male, I'm the provider. I'm going to provide for my family, whatever it takes, even if I'm gone X amount of days per month.
Yeah. And, once you kind of, I call it PTSD, right?
Okay.
Post-traumatic sales disorder.
Oh, okay.
It's once you come out of it, like
Right.
you're finally, and it took me a long time. I mean, it took me a very long time to just kind of decompress,
Yeah.
take a deep breath, look at where you've been, where you've come from.
Yeah.
And I know from my own personal standpoint, it was a lot of selfishness.
Right. Sure.
John, I truly loved doing what I was doing.
Right.
Like I couldn't imagine someone was going to pay me to get up every day and run my mouth.
Right.
And just talk to strangers, talk to people that I've known for years.
Right.
I love doing what I was doing.
Right.
But it just at some point it's a young man's sport.
Okay.
I'm not an old guy.
Right.
But kids are getting older.
Yeah.
Wife is, watching the clock, counting down the days till he's not back until Thursday. This is what I've got going on.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Got to get this kid to baseball, this kid to softball,
all the above.
Yeah. Right.
You know.
Worth it that time?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
it just.
Well, from a financial standpoint.
Yes.
worth it.
Yeah. I wouldn't. Well, first of all, I can't change it.
Right.
You
Sure.
know,
but you can look back and say yes or no or.
No, you can't.
What?
It's done.
So you don't believe in regret either, then?
Oh, I have very few regrets.
Okay.
Very few regrets.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, very few.
Right.
My regrets at this point really have nothing to do with anything consequential at
Right.
ever.
Right.
I'm a guy that, always says there's very few opportunities in life where you actually get to choose the fork in the road.
Okay.
The majority of the time, the fork is presented to you and they've already snapped off one half of it and you're going down this path.
Right.
And you've kind of heard it from me a couple times. I've taken less money.
Yeah.
Now leading up to twice.
Right.
Right. And then taking the job at this new company that ended in 2015 really changed my mindset.
Right.
First time in my life that, there was no salary.
No, okay, gotcha. So you're commission based.
100% commission based, eat what you kill.
Right.
And I listen to people, over time, when they complain about somebody making too much money and doing this, I always look back and I think, it's easy for you to say that, but you're not willing to take the level of risk that they were to do what I did or do what anybody else does. Most people don't have the mental capacity to think about getting salary of zero.
Right.
Or somebody saves 6 months worth of emergency funds so that if this thing doesn't work out, I've got 6 months laying in cash to do what's next.
So do you think that right there, taking a job there was no salary, do you think that forced you from a mindset of safety net to, okay, I've got to really go out there and I've got to focus on what I'm going to do, or I've got 6 months, but I'm not gonna be able to eat 6 months from now if I don't make something.
That company wasn't gonna give me 3 months.
Right. Sure. So your 6 months safety net didn't matter because
I was gonna need that 6 month safety net for when they canned me and I was looking for a new job.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, there was no middle ground.
Right.
I mean, there was absolutely zero middle ground. Like I said, I knew I was going to be successful, especially because they put me back into real estate with a company that was hard charging, had different ideas than everybody else.
Right.
I was getting to go out and tell a story that I was extremely excited about, super knowledgeable about, and even when I was selling, insurance for Nationwide, I still had guys asking me real estate questions.
Right.
Because they knew that my brother was still in the business. They knew that I was still following everything that was happening.
Right.
And it was my passion. And I still love real estate.
Yeah.
I talk about real estate all day, every day, big, small, in between.
Right. I love that. And we might
right.
on the back end. But I want to get to, okay, it's 2015 now. They shut the doors.
2015 transitions. Very large New York City, well-known company comes in, basically buys 25 wholesalers. Okay. They took 25 of our top wholesalers from the other company. And, the only way I can really describe it, John, is they just took 25 of the top salespeople out of the market so that nobody else could get them.
Right.
There was no product. There was nothing.
Okay. So why would they do that? Or what was the point behind it?
Just so nobody else could hire us.
Right. But so they paid y'all just to...
Big checks.
Just to be out of the market.
Big checks.
Okay.
And so this kind of transitions,
Can you define big checks for me? I mean, you don't have to give like exact numbers, but...
No, I can't.
Okay.
Right. It was enough to say, wow.
Okay. Right.
But the check came with strings.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
3-year contract. If you left within the 3 years, got fired, you owed all of the money back.
Yep.
That's another weird conversation, something that it's impossible to plan for. But yeah, so that was kind of January of 2016, and had the weirdest moment of my life in February 13th of 2016.
Okay. What's that?
Sitting at a son's soccer game, I had a major panic attack.
Okay.
Literally sitting in a chair, thought I was about to die.
Right.
Everybody around me was kind of noticing that I'm getting up and walking to the restroom. I'm splashing water. I'm just, it doesn't stop.
Right.
Lay in bed for the next 3 days, can't figure out what the hell's going on. Basically for the next 18 months dealt with the worst thing I'd ever dealt with in my life, which was anxiety.
Okay.
I know for a fact that at certain points I was dealing with a fair amount of depression.
Right.
You don't know it, and especially as athletes, we feel like we're invincible.
Power on.
Yeah.
Push through.
I remember Mother's Day of that same year going to my son's soccer game. It's probably one of the first times my kids had seen me cry.
Right.
I'm in the car. We're driving to Frisco for an FC Dallas soccer game, and I'm in tears because I'm just so nervous and so anxious. I just can't be in the car.
Right. Do you know what about? Do you mind? I mean, do you mind saying like anxious about what?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
All I could describe it, John, is there was this moment where I started to feel the anxiety coming on, and I would latch on, and I couldn't let go.
Right. Right.
Like, and then once the mind traps this thought of I'm anxious, it would just keep eating and eating and eating.
Right.
And I'd have days and weeks where I was stuck.
Right.
And keep in mind, I just happened to be in a position where at that time there wasn't a lot going on work-wise.
Right.
I wasn't having to go out and do 30 meetings a week. I was having to maintain some basic relationships.
Right.
But John, I'm scared to get in the car.
Really?
I mean, my career was 35,000 miles a year in the car, and I'm sitting there having this moment like, I'm scared to get in the car.
Right.
Like, how do I continue my career?
Right.
And so kind of going through that process, and I'll say this, I used to look at, I shouldn't say I've had a fair 4 or 5 suicides, in my life through time. And, I used to look at suicide and think, dude, that's chicken shit. It's weak. It's all these other things. Going through the anxiety deal, I finally understood it.
Right.
Never crossed my mind.
Right. But you could see how somebody could get there.
You do feel like, man, you're just in the bottom of the toilet bowl and it's just swirling and swirling, and you know where the bottom is, and it just keeps going and going.
Right.
And at that time, they're working on medication. They're trying to figure out, they're trying to do it, I don't even want to say holistically, but they're trying not to put me on what they consider to be antipsychotics.
Right, right.
And at some point I'm like, F that, buddy. I mean, if this is crazy, it's crazy.
Right, yeah.
But it was something my doctor said to me in that whole process, because he knew I was not working
right
as much as I was.
Right.
And he just said, look, Cory, he's like, if this gives you any indication, not everybody's built for retirement.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And it was profound.
And that's where I was going to go with that. Do you think it was because you weren't out there just grind, like your whole life was grinding?
Nothing to do.
Right.
I mean, literally, I would wake up. This was also the curse. I was getting up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning.
Right.
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Well, I could work out for an hour and a half.
Right.
Right. And my life was literally this, like 6:30 to 8. I'm going to work out. Now what?
Right.
I can work for 2 or 3 hours, make the phone calls I need to work if I've got 1 or 2 meetings. Now what? Now I've got 6 hours.
Right.
And it was literally like this countdown every day of filling space.
Right.
I mean, that year I played 64 rounds of golf. I hate golf. But it gave me something to do for 2.5 hours to just get out there, bang the ball, get back in the car.
To fill some of that time.
Yeah.
Ultimately, so when did you say that was?
That was 2016.
2016, February 2016.
Yep.
You said about 18 months, right? It's kind of when you were
on.
Right.
About 18 months, I felt better.
Right. Okay.
Or at least felt normal.
Right.
And I haven't had any real issues.
Sure.
Knock on wood since then. The medication's good.
Right.
But it's really what kind of started, the thought process of what am I going to do for the rest of my life?
So does that take you, at that point, you talk about taking step backs financially or in order to then gain, but do you take a step back in like life, be like, hey, let me re-examine myself and figure out
all of it.
Why is this happening? Okay, we're saying maybe it's because of work. I'm not built for retirement, whatever. But is there something else that like I need to be doing to help deal with that? And so is it like ultimately 18 months later you figure that out, or it's work in progress? Or
it was a very long 18 months.
Yeah.
And part of it was, I would have like 2 good months, and then, I'd have a bad month. I tell you, one of the things that, kind of threw a wrench in it, I was, finally feeling better kind of later in 2016. And one of my buddies just dropped dead, 43 years old, heart attack, and that just sent me
back.
And I mean, it was weird. I mean, I still, I think about it, and, I have thoughts about anxiety at this point, but I don't get that latch on moment where I start thinking about it and it spins into something else.
Right.
But it's also because I'm super busy.
Right. Right.
I mean, I'm the guy that listens to my Audible books on 3 times speed.
Yeah. My mind can't process that.
Right.
Man.
And, it's my gift.
Yeah. Right.
But that's also the curse at the same time is my mind is moving at light speed.
Right.
And so to have that much dead space and really nothing to fill the void.
Right.
It was just a lot
of
downtime.
So 18 months later, what do you do? Or where do you go?
Yeah,
like,
so,
what are you doing life-wise at that point?
Work kind of picked back up.
Okay, yeah.
We were back to out there selling.
So you're still in that 3-year period, though?
Still in that 3-year period.
Yeah.
Then kind of late in 2017, had a buddy of mine working at a CPA firm that says, hey, I want to run something by you. And it sounds super intriguing. CPA firm does financial advising, but talking about, go ahead.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Are you the go-to, like, of your buddies, are you the go-to that's like, hey, I respect his business thoughts or his financial thoughts, because it seems like people, or like I respected work ethic, like because it seems like people are reaching out to you to be like, hey, I know the perfect guy for this, or I know a guy that can give me an answer for this. Are you that guy for them? I mean, I know that might be putting a little pressure on you from to be arrogant, but
it's a great question. Man, John, great question. The answer's yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of my friends at this point, outside of the Tim Lamonts that I've been friends with forever, the majority of my friends are much older.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I still feel like I'm the young guy, in the group, have some very, very successful, very, very smart people, in the group, but I think what ends up happening is everybody has their specific niche of expertise, within our bubbles, and I do the same thing. I think people come to me for certain, ideas and concepts of things that they're thinking about that, I'm probably somebody good to get an opinion on, but I've also got my 5 to 10 people that I'm going to reach out to with a very specific question and try to gain their knowledge, so they can help me.
Right.
It's amazing that a lot of people just want to do everything on their own.
Yeah, it's wild.
I'm a guy that I talk to bums. If somebody wants to ask me for $1, I always give them the same story. I'll give you $1, but you got to give me a story.
Right. Okay.
Tell me how you got here.
Right.
Because I'm only going to get to experience so many life experiences on my own.
For sure.
Walking out the front door.
Right.
You've got all of your life experiences that you can share and make me a much smarter person so that I don't make the same mistakes that you did.
For sure. No doubt about that. Okay. So a guy approaches you again.
Yeah.
Right?
So he's talking about this, this very interesting consulting idea.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, the gig that I'm working at, while it may be successful at some point, I just wasn't seeing, the real opportunity.
Right.
We created this company, we as a team, and as a management group, I think we made the wrong decision on what direction to go with from a product standpoint that we created. I think the industry was moving in a different direction, so we just didn't have a lot of traction.
Right.
I had this very significant 3-year guarantee.
Right.
Right. And so it got to some point where I was just biding my time.
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's what that was going to be my next question.
I was already transitioning.
Right.
And I won't say a dude's name, but, I was having this conversation with a buddy over drinks, and he might have mentioned it to somebody else, and somebody sold me out to the president of the firm.
Ouch.
Now, look, it is what it is. I mean, at this point, it was 2018. I'd been friends with, the president of the firm for 8 years.
Yeah.
He called me and he said, hey, I'm kind of hearing this rumor, blah, blah, blah. If they'd let you out of your 3-year deal, that you would go.
Yeah.
And he just asked me point blank, and talk about a weird conversation, because now someone's put you directly on the spot. You know exactly what you've said. It's not like he's misheard the conversation, because he's giving it back to me word for word.
Exactly.
But you don't really have any slick shit that you can say.
Yeah, right.
I mean, literally in the car driving, you got to make like this snap decision.
Right.
And I just told him, I said, that's exactly what I said. I said, if there was an opportunity and a possibility to let me out of my contract early, forgive the loan,
right, then I would leave. Mm-hmm. And is that what happened?
Kind of got weirder than that.
Okay.
I wasn't the only one thinking it.
Okay.
But because we had this, this almost familial relationship where all of us had known each other for so long, it was hard, because you felt like you were almost stabbing your buddy in the back,
right,
by wanting to do something different.
Right.
So what happens is, for the next 2 weeks to almost a month, I don't hear a word.
Okay.
You're sitting there going, I'm pretty sure I had that conversation. I know I didn't make it up.
Right.
But I'm not getting phone calls from anybody else.
Right.
Like, normally the rumor mill in this very small community of brothers would have been, hey, I heard this.
Man.
Yeah, nothing.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on. So about a month after, president calls me. He's like, all right, here's what we're doing. Package.
Oh, yeah.
Not only were they just going to let me go, but they gave me parting gifts.
Oh, nice.
But there was also 10 of my buddies too.
Oh, wow. So
I was the one that opened up this can of worms.
I was about to say,
look, I can't take sole credit, because I'm assuming at some point sales aren't what they should be. We've got all of these guys. We're not doing the level of sales that we should. Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Right.
We should be looking at trimming a little bit of the fat.
Right.
So I took the deal, went and consulted for about 4 months. Mm-hmm. Had a weird 4 months. Truly, enjoyed, learned a lot, not necessarily from the financial planning side,
Right.
but dealing with what I would consider to be a super, super high-end CPA doing very sophisticated tax strategies for very, very wealthy people. Opened my eyes. But it also, in order to be in that business, I was really leaning towards becoming a financial planner myself.
Okay.
Right. So come 2008 to 2010, right, the world has fallen apart.
Yeah.
My goal always was to save my money and go out and buy a financial planning practice.
Okay.
We were kind of joking before we got on about, what the financial and insurance world looks like. Yeah, it's a bunch of 60 to 65-year-old white guys whose kids aren't in the business, no real direction.
Yeah.
And the majority of financial advisors that I spoke to were just going to die with their book.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You're going to die. All of their clients are within 5 to 10 years of each other. We're all just going to die together.
Right.
I'm not going to sell the book. I'm just going to dwindle down the assets until all of my clients are dead.
Right.
Like that is the worst strategy possible.
No doubt.
So that was my thoughts in 2008, 2010. I just, the world fell apart and I didn't have the cash on hand at that point because I'm still a young guy.
Right. Yeah.
Then you take kind of the flip side, coming out thinking, all right, do I really want to do this? And the more I really thought about retirement, how I love real estate, just mailbox money.
Yeah.
The fact that I can invest in something, tenants are there, tenants are going to pay the rent, they're going to send me a check every single month. Like simple.
Doesn't sound, it couldn't sound any better.
Right. Set it, forget it, rinse, lather, repeat. Let's just do it over and over.
Right.
But the real challenge I had as a certified financial planner, it was going to be very difficult for me. And, talking about a fiduciary responsibility, I've heard some pretty crackpot financial strategies before, but every single financial advisor truly believes, even if it's the dumbest thing that I've ever heard, and I feel like I need to take the hand sanitizer when I get back in the car and just lather myself because I feel dirty.
Yeah.
They still feel like they're doing the best thing for their clients.
You think that
I truly 100% believe that they think this is the best strategy for the clients, but it also is pretty good for them.
Right, exactly.
At the same time.
So have they convinced themselves that it's the best thing for their client?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they get in trouble, it's always somebody else's fault. It's never what they were doing.
Right, no doubt.
But no, so the thought was, do I really want to be a financial advisor?
Yeah.
And the hardest part for me was, can I bear the personal responsibility of 100 families' entire net worth being on my shoulders?
Right.
Like that was just an incredible amount of pressure every time I thought about it. And then I'm also thinking, when do you get to go on vacation?
Right.
And how do you leave?
Right.
Like how do you, and part of the answer is nobody's really managing your money on a day-to-day basis.
For sure.
Your financial advisor's parceling it off to, a third-party money manager who is watching your money all day, every day. His sole job is just to gather the assets and pick which manager.
Right.
So your guy's never really the smart guy. Like I said, there are some very smart guys out there that are doing that themselves, but they're few and far between.
Right.
Just because those guys are at risk of dropping dead from a heart attack from working themselves to death, because that's a very difficult job. And there are smart people better equipped to manage money than the local financial advisor in Dallas, Texas.
For sure.
But it also gets me to, what's probably my more important point is, I just got to this weird level of consciousness where I just didn't really believe in the financial system anymore.
Right.
The idea and the concept that, we work our entire lives, right? We save all of this money, and at some magical point, we just throw our hands up in the air and we say, I'm going to retire.
I'm retired.
I'm going to cross my fingers, pray to God, hold my breath, that nothing happens in the next 6 months or 25 years that's going to eradicate every single hour and ounce of sweat that I've put in my entire career.
Right. Which
it just, you say it out loud, like I'm just going to hope and pray.
Right.
Like most people don't end with FU money.
Right.
Right. Most people end with an amount of money commensurate with the amount of money that they've made.
Right.
Chop that into 50 to 75% as an ongoing live. It's a very tight line. We used to always joke the perfect retirement plan is the one where you spend your last penny and you just drop dead.
Yeah, sure.
Like that's the perfect retirement plan.
No doubt. So what do you, in your mind, what do you do? Like what I know my thoughts, and there's probably some lined up together, but you mentioned real estate. Is it all real estate? Are you like all one thing? Or are you, and this will segue into what you're doing now, is it investing into certain businesses? So to get there. So right now you've invested into 2 Jersey Mike subs, correct?
Yeah. So
and then you're against I guess 3.
Yeah.
Jersey
So
Mike subs.
as of last week, I'm signed and I officially own the territory.
Right.
For number 3.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
first store is in Mesquite, Texas.
Right.
I'll kind of back into that. Number 2 is in Richardson, corner of Plano Road and Beltline.
Right. Okay.
And then number 3 will be in Cedar Hill.
Okay.
So,
And so ultimately where I was going with that was you're not going to say, okay, you need to put your money into the stock market, into this. It's invested into investments, this business, or real estate.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Okay.
One of the things that we did in the real estate investment trust, world is we used to always talk about the endowment model, right?
Okay.
The smartest investors on the planet, the Harvard, the Yale endowments, all these people. When you really dig in and look at their individual assets, most of them have less than 25% of their money in the stock market.
Right. Okay.
So everybody's telling us that, hey, the only way to get rich in this world is to put your money in the stock market, watch it go up, but yet the smartest money on the planet does very little in the stock market.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So you're like, okay, so, who's being played for the fool here?
Right.
And I always joke that there was always somebody smarter than me, pulling the strings.
No doubt about it.
They know what's really happening. I'm getting the information, even being in the business, second or third hand, and it's too late by then.
Right.
The money has already moved to take advantage of any opportunity.
Right.
And from that standpoint, someday, once I'm out of the financial business and my licenses are gone, no longer a CFP as of February 25th of this year,
Okay.
I'll be able to participate in some more speculative things in the stock market. If I want to get into IPOs,
right,
I can do that. But as a financial advisor or being someone in the financial business, you had to stay away from a lot of those opportunities.
Right.
But to really answer your question, I was just looking at trying to not only, I was trying to build a revenue stream.
Right.
Which, as I said, I was proud of myself. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I gave up a long time ago on trying to ever attain the level that I hit record year.
Okay.
Right. It's a stupid number.
Yeah.
It's rather be lucky than good. I was at the right place, right time, right mentality. Everything just came together for a 3-4 year historical run that changed my life forever.
Right.
But it also put me into perspective back to my day that I made $100,000.
Yeah.
I saw some guys make $1 million a year and blow it.
Right.
And live on that $1 million just like they'd made $100,000.
Right.
They made $1 million look very cheap.
Right.
One of my favorite stories on, just me personality wise in general is probably like 2012, 2013. I called my boss one day and I'm like, hey, I think I just bought the dumbest thing I've ever bought in my life. And he's like, Cory, what's that? I was like, I just bought a golden tea machine.
Okay. Yeah.
He's like, Cory, how much you spent on the golden tea machine? I'm like, God, I think $3,600.
Yeah.
And he literally just starts laughing at me.
Right.
He's like, Cory, you do realize your coworkers are buying lake houses, boats, $100,000 cars. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's why they're idiots.
Yeah. Right.
I'm over here penny pinching and being pissed about spending $3,600 on a golden tea machine when someone's buying a lake house.
Yeah. Right. So in your mind, do you follow that model? You said penny pinching, so that makes me that
I don't.
You don't penny pinch.
I don't penny pinch, but
right.
but what my wife and I spend money on isn't extravagant.
Right. Okay.
It's not cars.
Right.
It's not lake houses.
Right.
It's not big ticket items.
Right.
You know.
Will you go on like extravagant vacations or anything like that?
What's the definition of extravagant vacations?
You want like a monetary definition, or you want,
let's do it.
I don't know, 20,000.
Yeah, never that.
Never that. Yeah.
Never that.
10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
That's a good family vacation.
Yeah.
But it's also the sacrifice that I made.
Sure.
I was having this conversation with your dad before we started. I mean, you hope at the end of the day the kids recognize the sacrifice. I recognize the sacrifice my father made for me working 90 hours a week.
No doubt.
Hope my kids have that same, recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Because for all the times that I was gone, and everything that they missed, I think it's going to be hard for them to imagine me missing that 4th grade play versus the ski trip every December for a week.
Yeah.
Or spring break trips skiing, or the week in Turks and Caicos, the weeks in the Bahamas,
Right.
Those to me were the things that I could give back, donate my time, and really try to enjoy, the sacrifice that I made and give back to the family, because I hope those are the moments that they remember.
So, and I couldn't agree more on that as far as like it's also tough. I couldn't agree more with like, okay, I'm going to make these sacrifices for my wife, for my family, for, their family, hopefully. Right. But from a standpoint of going back to work-life balance a little bit, I feel like my wife, as much as we have a great relationship, I don't think that she would want me to put in 90 hours a week. I don't think that would not go over well with us for very long. She might appreciate the work, but then at some point she's going to say, listen, this isn't working for us, right? I don't care that I get to drive, an Escalade now versus like if you were home, like, more than I'm driving a Tahoe, right? Doesn't matter to me, right? Or
it still got funny at some point. When I spent those 1 or 2 years kind of at home, I mean, I joked to people that I was retired for 2 years, because what's the definition of retirement?
Right, doing whatever
you don't
want.
work, you're living off the money that you made, and you're not looking for, I mean, that's retirement.
Yeah.
But it was a hard adjustment period once I ended up back at home.
Right.
Because my wife was just used to me being gone.
Yeah, right.
She didn't realize that now this guy came in. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to figure out why the laundry's not done every day because it's just like one load a day, and I seem to be managing it perfectly.
Right.
With my very militaristic, I'm getting up at this time.
Yeah.
But at some point, that stuff fades.
Yeah. So getting back to where you're going now, what made you say, okay, I wanna just go out and do my own deal, and this is I'm gonna get into the restaurant business. Because from what I know, the restaurant business can be tough. And so what made you think, okay, I'm built for entrepreneurship and I'm also going into the restaurant business?
I didn't look at it as the restaurant business as much as I looked into it as the franchise business.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
The franchise itself is a business model in general.
Right.
So when I went out and I was looking, at the world of franchises, was I looking at auto care? It didn't necessarily mean that I needed to have any level of expertise in any of those.
Sure.
Right. I'd never worked in a restaurant. Based on my personality type, I would have been the world's worst waiter.
Sure. Yeah. Do you want this or not?
Exactly. I'd have been more tempted to throw that tip right back in your face and F you and I'm out of here.
Right. For sure.
But no, so I looked long and hard. I was always interested in the Jersey Mike's.
Okay. So you did look at a lot of different, like what are some, are you?
I looked at 5 or 6.
Okay.
I mean, looked in the fitness, looked in the automotive.
Yeah.
Looked a little bit into the educational background,
okay.
Some of these Montessori schools and some of these, and none of them really intrigued me. Mm-hmm. I fell in love with Jersey Mike's the first time I had Jersey Mike's.
Okay.
And part of it was I spent so much time in New York City with buddies that I played college ball with. And also just being in New York, there was just something about a New York City deli sandwich,
right.
Where you walk up to the counter and somebody slices. I mean, this is as close as it gets to that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I love about Jersey Mike's, I'm not going to give you a commercial. If you had Jersey Mike's, great.
Sure.
It's a model and a process that was easy to follow.
Okay.
The one thing that I was not trying to do was recreate the wheel on anything. Mm-hmm. I was looking for a business that was going to be self-sustainable, rinse, lather, repeat, get one up and running. Part of the commitment I made to Jersey Mike's, and the only reason they really gave me 2, which was kind of unheard of, and I say me and my buddy Shane,
right,
is because there was 2 of us, but B, they believed in us.
Right.
I was telling my sales guy a couple weeks ago when they called us about number 3, I'm like, what do we do? Mm-hmm. We have no restaurant experience.
Right.
And I told him, like, buddy, if you'd have told me that only 1 in 100 get these franchises, like, I probably wouldn't have just taken off for 2 years and talked my best friend into getting rid of his job and coming into this with me. Mm-hmm. But it's a servant, it's really a servant leadership type of position. They believe in the same things. The more money I made, like I said, the more humble I became, but also the more I was willing to really give back to the community.
Yeah.
And the other side, thinking back to almost biblical times, not to get into religion at all, but the majority of the time you were only going to do what your father did.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Dad was a carpenter. You were a carpenter,
no doubt.
And for a lot of the 17th, 18th, 19th century, that was it. Mm-hmm. But yet we've gotten so far away from a parenting standpoint. And I'll say it this way. Got a couple buddies that are Indians, right? Families from India, and I just love watching the family work, not only from a family relationship standpoint, but they move everybody into the house. They pull their assets. They're 100% committed to family businesses and growing. Mm-hmm. And we as Caucasians at 18 years old, we send our kids off and tell them, don't come back.
Yeah, peace out.
Yeah. Go out there, accumulate as much debt as you can,
Yeah.
right? School loans, put that I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so backwards.
Right.
You know, and I've just had so much time to think that, you know, man, what was I really doing? Like I've made this, you know, I've made a decent amount of money, but I haven't done anything for my kids.
Right.
You know, I haven't given them anything. I haven't built anything.
Right.
You know, I haven't laid the groundwork. You know, once I'm dead and gone 100 years from now, nobody's even going to know who I am.
Yeah.
But if I create this family lineage or a business or these opportunities, you know, to create other opportunities for future family members, hey, then, you know, maybe I've left a legacy and maybe I've actually done something,
Right.
you know, with my time on this planet.
So is that more important to you now than money?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So what?
The one thing that I'm good at is making money.
Right.
Like whatever that knack is, you know, to kind of get back to the conversation, back to my dad, you know, it was a blessing and a curse, you know, because there were times where, you know, personally, I just became so consumed with money, and it wasn't the consumption of the money or how much money I made. It's just from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, the only thing that was on my mind based on my career was money.
Right.
My success wasn't defined by building widgets. My success was defined by how much money I raised, in turn, learn how money moves.
Right.
How much money, you know, it was money every single day.
Right.
And that was one of those things, taking some time off, that was very hard to decompress from.
For sure.
You know, it wasn't that the world revolved around money, but my life did revolve 100% around money.
But to your point earlier, you said money, you know, somebody that says money doesn't matter has never had money or something like that, right? Is that
Yeah,
what you
money
said?
doesn't buy happiness.
Yeah, but it's still, it helps you pay the doctor's bills. It helps you go to the dentist. It helps you like lay your head down on a comfortable pillow. To me, it's that important. It's important. It's something that is going to make your life a little bit easier whenever I get older. Like, I'm going to be able to take care of myself. You know, that sort of thing. Like, it's very, very important. But to hear it's not the most important thing still in my mindset is tough for me to hear, because I think that there's not much more than important besides your health and besides maybe, you know, your relationship with the Lord or whoever you want it to be with. Like, there's certain things that some people might put in front of it, but like your health and then monetary gain is up there for me, at least where my mindset is right now.
Yeah, it's a competitive moment.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a family member.
It's not what I'm getting at is it's not.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the legacy yet for me.
It's not the legacy yet, but you know, I'm going on this weird path of entrepreneurism. You know, and one of the most difficult decisions and one of the weirdest moments is I continue to have family members and friends that are looking at me and saying, "Why the hell did it take so long?
Right.
Like, you've been talking about doing this forever." You know, but it's so hard to walk away from a successful career, you know, and without saying too much, I mean, I can go get a job tomorrow in my former field making 175 to 200,000, and my former coworkers and people that I respect look at me like I'm an idiot.
Right.
Like, why the hell would you walk away from doing this for the next 15 to 20 years? You're always going to have a job, probably always going to make more than that amount.
Right.
The money didn't necessarily matter.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have a knack, you know, for putting myself in the right position and being smart enough to understand what the risks and the rewards are.
That's a great point right there. When you feel like you can just go make it,
and John, like I said,
then you're like, okay,
that's that proud
no
moment.
problem.
I'm nowhere near that moment.
Right.
Right. But I feel like I'm on the right path of at least replacing a certain amount of that income once again from zero.
Right. Yeah.
From scratch. Nobody, you know, except for me and my buddy. This is our baby. It's our brainchild.
Yeah.
You know, and it's hard to get yourself up off the bench and just finally say, I'm fucking doing it.
Yeah.
Like, this is the moment. I'm not looking back.
Right.
I'm moving forward with this idea.
Because you have to be all in. You cannot be 1 foot, right? One foot in, 1 foot out, especially when you're putting that money on the line.
I will tell you one of the funniest things one of the funniest moments is they made us go to Prosper.
Okay. When you're talking Jersey Mike's.
Jersey Mike's, to train for 8 weeks.
Okay.
And I will never forget, and my buddy and I, we were traveling to and from. So we both live in Sunnyvale. And we're both having this moment separately, but it's not till we mentioned it one day in the car. You know, because here we are, and at that store, there's 3 different colored shirts.
Okay.
The owners wear white.
Yeah.
the shift leaders wear red,
Okay.
and the newbies, low man on the totem pole, wears blue.
Okay.
So here you have me and my buddy who are franchisees.
Yeah.
We own 2 stores, but yet we're in the blue shirts.
Okay.
And you get these weird moments where the parents are coming in with their kids and they're looking at you, and you can just see it on the parents' face. Like as soon as they walk away, they're like, "Hey, Billy, whatever you do, don't be like those 2 losers.
Yeah, right.
Do
yeah.
not be the 40-year-old guy standing
well,
behind the counter
Yeah.
at a sandwich shop."
Yeah.
And it was funny because it was so weird for me, the guy that was used to being in a 3-piece suit,
Yeah.
people looking, going, "I wonder what that guy does."
What does he do? Yeah.
To being the guy
He's your
behind the
wolf of you're the Wolf of Wall Street. They're walking up to you and saying,
Right.
"I'll quit whatever I'll do if you tell me how you made your money." or
Exactly.
whatever. Yeah. If you show
you
me
know, and
that
now
check.
I'm the guy in the blue shirt standing behind the counter.
Yeah.
You know, but
So do you get that feeling now? Like knowing, I would imagine that is interesting. Knowing what you've done before, the amount of money that you've made before, and the perception of somebody that's making a sandwich
Yeah.
is that like, oh,
John,
you might not care.
oh no, I care.
Yeah.
But it's such a different deal, and it's part of the reason why I love Jersey Mike's.
Okay.
John, I get to sit back there and shoot the shit with everybody that comes in.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know, and they know there's something different about me. Just the way that I speak, my conversations, you know, I'm a 4-syllable lyrical miracle, just to give you a little rap line.
See free.
But people understand
Yeah.
that there's something different.
Right.
You know, and I tell them, not only do I own 1, I own 2. I tell
Right.
them I came from the investment business.
Right.
You know, and then it feels like a family-owned franchise.
Yeah.
Right? Where people feel connected coming in.
Yeah.
You know, and so much of this, trying to build a legacy for my family is, you know, Shane and I are really trying to create an opportunity, you know, within the community and for certain people where they're never going to have the ability to do it on their own.
Right.
You know, so I was going to say, I got a family member the other day that approaches me and she's like, "Hey, I really want to know how to make money." And I'm standing there and, you know, it's such a generic question.
I was going to say that's the wrong question.
Yeah, and I know, like, I felt like saying, "Well, how much money do you want to make?" You know, the answer is a lot.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like anytime somebody, you know, asks me, "Hey, what's the number?" I always quote the line from Wall Street 2. The answer is more.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if I'm ever going to be satisfied. And at some point, it's not about the number anymore. You know, it's just about what's next, what intrigues me. You know, but we're truly in a position, and this is why we also chose Jersey Mike's, is it's really a philanthropic company.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, every year in March, we give away 1 day of our entire company salary. Every location gives it up to charity.
Okay.
You know, but we're also looking at creating, you know, opportunities for people that work in our stores, mentorship. Like, I'm going to have 3 to 5 stores. This isn't going to be it. There's other opportunities. You know, and it's hard to explain to an 18 to 22-year-old with no college education that, "Hey, buddy, you're working for $8.59 bucks. You're getting your tips, blah, blah, blah." But there could be a $30, $50, $70,000 a year job around the corner. You know, if you just come in, understand the culture that we're trying to build, jump on board. But it's been very strange that, you know, we've put a couple of people in a position where we're like, "Hey, this could be the path," and they're just not interested. Like, they
Right.
don't. There's a reason they're working in a Jersey Mike's, and I
Sure.
hate to say it that way.
Sure. But you know what's interesting about that though is because this is where at an 18-year-old me would have had a hard time with this. But if they know what you've done, the experiences you have,
Yeah.
it would definitely be worth it to somebody that's a 16, 17, 18-year-old person to just work at the Jersey Mike's and pick your brain all day. That's part of what I'm enjoying about this podcast is I get to sit across from guys and be like, "What did you do? How did you do it? Where are you going? Why are you going there?"
Yeah, but John,
And
here's the difference. You know, and you're 100% on. You know, I'm super intrigued. Just kids in general, right? I mean, I'm a guy that likes to ask a lot of questions. I
Yep.
want to know why.
Right.
Right. So we did our first, trying to think what it was called, just kind of our first training day.
Okay.
Right. We've got a little bit of an orientation, give a little bit of my background. You know, I hate to call them kids, right? But, you know, at our age, it just anybody
Young adult,
25 and
whatever.
under, young adult. 18-year-old who's headed off to University of Texas at Austin, you know, comes up and she's like, "Hey, you know, I appreciate what you said. My mom's always telling me that I really need to learn about investing." You know, and this girl is. She's constantly picking my brain. But here's kind of the point, and here's what I'm getting to, is some of the smartest people that I know in life don't actually have a college education. For whatever reason, couldn't afford it, couldn't get there, but smart as hell, will get into any conversation that you want, but they just don't have a college education, right? And look, I've truly enjoyed the mentorship, being in the store, but the only kids that ask questions are my kids that are going off to college.
Oh, right.
You know, even if it's a 16-year-old who's going to college.
Sure.
You know, the one that's 19 to 22 that's just working, just got a crap job.
Right.
I think the other part, John, is a lot of them have worked in fast food before, and they find it very hard to believe that Shane and I give a shit about anything about them.
Really?
Like how different it is. And I told Shane the other day, you know, because he's like, these kids just want to text message.
Yeah.
Like when I call, your boss is calling. And I told him, I'm like, Shane, buddy.
They give you a text back.
They're just part-time employees.
Yeah, right.
You know, we're so used to living in a world when your boss calls, whether you pick up the phone. You know, if you're not available, he's your first call back.
Right.
You know, but I just think they're not used to, you know, having someone that, you know, is interested in what's going on.
Right.
You know, how do we build? How do we grow? How do we get better? What's going on at school? What's going on at home?
Do you think that over time, like the employees that end up staying with you will be the ones that like want to know that type of stuff, want to know how to build? No.
It's just what's in it for them.
It's an interesting. So you at a Jersey Mike's, you will have lots of turnover, or you will not have lots of turnover.
Lots of turnover.
Lots of turnover. Like what's a lot? I don't know. So how many employees do you have at one store?
So at this point, we just have the one store.
Right.
Because of COVID and everything else, we're a little lighter staffed than we normally would be. We started out with.
Are y'all? Can you dine in?
No.
No. Okay. So it's to go only. Okay.
To go only. So we're 20. Started with probably 20.
Okay.
Worked our way down to 12. Matriculated our way back up to 15 or 16. You know, and some people help themselves out of the door. We vary on the employees.
Yeah.
I mean, the challenge that we have is, you know, it just is what it is. You know, I mean, you're getting a certain level of employee.
Sure.
I mean, we'd like to think that we're creating this very open environment to have fun, because I expect you to banter. I expect you to have fun with the
customers.
You know, with the customers walking in. But, you know, a lot of the people just don't have the social skills to do that.
For sure.
You know, and whether that's upbringing, whether it's social situation where they're feeling uncomfortable, whether it's, difference of color.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and we have some of those issues. You know, and Mesquite is 60 to 70% African American.
Right.
You know, and some of my kids from Sunnyvale aren't used to, you know, having those conversations or being, you know, it's kind of the conversation we talk about politically at this point, that we need to have these conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, but not everybody's raised, and, you know, the same could be said vice versa, you know, with the Prosper store.
Yeah, no doubt.
Prosper store is very different.
Yeah.
You know.
So whenever you have these 15 employees, let's say, like the reason why you have that number, because if I walk into a Jersey Mike's, there's what at working at a time, maybe 3 to 5?
No, 5 to 6 probably.
5 to 6, okay.
Depending on, you know, what day it is.
Sure.
Rush hour. Yep.
Right. So the reason why you have to staff 15 is just because you might not have enough for each shift, or what? I mean, is that ultimately?
It just rotates through.
Just rotates through.
Yeah, I mean,
because they're part-time?
Part-time.
90% of them, whatever?
Yeah, 90%.
Yeah,
I probably have 3 to 4, you know, full-time employees, and those are the older employees.
Right. So what's next? I mean, what do you do? Like, is it obtain the 3 to 5 Jersey Mike's and then we call it a day, and then you're doing other things? Like, because you said I've got the entrepreneurial bug, right? Like, so
Yeah, it's bitten me.
Yeah. So you've got something else going on.
Yeah. So part of it is, you know, like you said, you know, I made the post on Facebook the other day, you know, because I truly do feel blessed at this point. Not a super religious guy.
Yeah.
You know, but to be in the position that I'm in, to be able to take the risk, you know, still can't say that I've seen it through to completion. You know, but I also know that, you know, getting back to our conversation, certain people have expertises in certain things that I don't.
No doubt.
You know, it's funny when I hear, you know, somebody go, you're stupid, or, you know, these kids are joking. You know, I'm like, about what? Right. You know, just because so-and-so doesn't know this, you know, you may not know how to weld or change the oil in the car. So let's be particular about what someone doesn't have a particular education in that you might have.
Right.
Because it doesn't make you better than me just because I can, you know, talk about economics or it's just, it's what I did.
Right.
And it's my background.
Right. And that background, from a standpoint of entrepreneurship, how do you feel like that's going to propel you forward? Meaning, like, your financial background, does that help you off here? Your whatever, your selling background, does all those things play into like where you're going, what you want to be doing like 5 years, 10 years from now?
I have no idea.
No idea.
I do. I mean,
do you say? I mean, okay,
everything for me is everything is so well thought out.
Okay, so I was going to say, are you a goal guy? Like
not really. I mean, but let's talk about real estate.
Okay.
Right, for 1 minute, because my wife and I have been through this process where, you know, when you're a traveling sales guy, I always joke that my daughter's going to look back at some point and go, Daddy couldn't keep a job.
Yeah, right.
You know, because by the time she was in 5th grade, she's been in 5 different schools and we've owned 5 different houses. You know, but our first trip to Houston, this poor realtor's with us for like 3 days, right? She's probably shown us 75 properties. We walk into one, and within 15 seconds, we're like, done. This is it. Like, we knew exactly what the criteria was.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way that I'm wired. I think about something for a very long period of time, but I'm slowly moving towards that point where once I cross the line and I'm ready to pull the trigger, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
I can't really talk myself back.
Right.
You know, so I'm getting 3 or 4 opportunities that are brought to me that I'm very intrigued by.
Right.
You know, because a lot of times it takes me time to do some due diligence and really try to figure out what I know about what I don't know. You know, I've really got to plug my own holes over time, but you know, there's also such thing as having to have faith in somebody else and trusting somebody's expertise, and that's really the hard part. So my next deal is, I had a buddy of mine that he and his buddies are hunting guides out in Southwest Texas. Yeah. Never been to the desert, never been to Big Bend, don't own a gun, you know, fire me for being a Texan.
Yeah.
But the idea was so intriguing, because real estate is real estate.
Yeah.
You know, I had an analogy that we used to use. I'm going to give you $1,000 worth of stocks, $1,000 worth of bonds, or $1,000 worth of real estate. Which one are you going to take?
Okay. So
real estate every time.
I'm going to take, I was going to say, I'm going to take
every
real
time.
estate.
Because I know over time, you know, real estate always goes up. So does the stock market. So all the above.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to have to ride the whipsaw effect of the ups and downs.
Right.
And see how that happens. You know, so it's kind of a raw land deal. You know, but it's really in the hunting business.
Right.
You know, looking at the opportunities. I know plenty of hunters that go on some
Very
pretty
expensive.
incredible, expensive trips. You know, and so really just taking, you know, the time, you know, opportunity to really learn not only about that business, but also how many other businesses, because I'll give you another weird one. So we're getting into the hunting business.
Yeah.
One of my financial advisors in Arizona calls me. He's like, man, you're not going to believe this. He's like, I know you're talking about doing this hunting deal. You know, I got a PPM, private placement memorandum, in front of me for this hunting opportunity in almost the same area of Texas that you're in. I'm like, all right, well, that's interesting. I'm like, what is it? And he said, well, basically they're buying about 600 acres. They're putting up this fence. I'm like, oh, okay. So listen to me. Act like I know what's going on. Like this is, of course. Now I'm the freaking expertise. Right, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, oh, so it's high fence hunting. He's like, what's a high fence? I'm like, see, look at me now. Look at me now. Ask me what a high fence costs per square foot. Like, I got this.
Yeah.
He's like, no, it's for breeding. Like, they're just putting all of these exotics on this 600 square foot high fence ranch to just breed. You know, and it sends my mind racing, because now I'm thinking, okay, so we're accumulating this amount of acreage. This is what we're doing. This was the sole purpose. But now you open my eyes to,
I've got this side that I can do too.
I've got this potential side over here. And I'm also, you know, the guy at this point, I mean, not to tap myself on the shoulder and brag, but, you know, I've raised over $1 billion in my career.
Right.
You know, if somebody said, hey, I need you to go out and raise $10 million tomorrow, I'd have to think about it.
Yeah.
Have to see what the deal was. But I think I could probably get it done.
Right.
You know, and that's really where ultimately I'm transitioning to. And, you know, my buddy Shane and I had that conversation before I got here today. It's like, you know, man, we're working our ass off. You know, we're working our ass off at store number 1, store number 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I lost 18 pounds in 3 weeks on what I call the Jersey Mike's diet.
Right.
Which is just work 100 hours a week, don't eat any bread.
Right.
You know, and I lost 18 pounds.
Right.
You know, and so at some point we want to put the money to work. You know, but we don't want to work.
Exactly.
But we also, we laughed about this. We're not those people. Like we're just, it's not in my blood to just go, hey, John, here's $100,000. I love your idea. Go get it, killer.
Yeah, right.
I can't.
Well,
I don't operate that way.
This goes to what you said earlier about this way back and how good or bad of a teammate you were.
Yeah.
How do you feel that applies to business right now? Like, because you're talking about these partnerships. Does that mean like, okay, I've got to be aligned with the right guy that can handle like my mentality? Is that what Shane is? Is that like, not only that's a great idea, but man, John, I'm just sorry, I'm not going to jive with you. Like, I'm not, you know, like, so in my mind, I feel like that's a huge deal.
They have to be able to put up with me.
Right.
You know, because at least at this point, you know, I'm the majority owner of every single one of these partnerships.
Right.
You know, with me and Shane, it's definitely 50-50.
Right.
Like, I don't care what the percentage is. Shane and I have been best friends since we were 20 years old. Somebody's got to have the final decision. And so, that's just kind of how that goes. But
Right.
Shane and I have to see eye to eye. But Shane's used to dealing with me.
Right.
The new business partners in the hunting deal, they're just a little different because they don't come from a business background.
Right.
But once again, I don't come from a hunting background. So there's a lot of give and take where I'm completely clueless on certain situations.
Yeah.
But they have no idea on, hey, why do we need to set up an LLC? Why are we setting up the accounts this way? What's the structure of the company?
Yeah.
It's not just, hey, we're going to open a bit. No,
Yeah,
it's a little more complicated than that.
Whenever just to get onto that, just for a little bit of time, when you're setting up a company, and this is a pretty big transition here, but I see myself the way I was doing it initially, and you see some of my friends the way they were doing it. They're not necessarily setting up LLCs; they're doing it under their own name, yada yada yada. Like in that vein, are you setting yourself up to fail? Like, is that what you're doing by not knowing how this exactly works? In your, this is where I just want. Your opinion, your professional opinion. Because
so here's what I always say, right? And this goes back to my entire world of the financial world. A, I'm not an attorney. B, 100%. I'm not a tax professional.
Yeah, right.
Like I said, that 4 months working in a tax office with a CPA. A&M grad, super sophisticated, high-end accounting. Mm-hmm. Look, you can say all you want about our president, right? And you want to see his tax returns, but he was still playing by the rules.
Right.
Taxes are meant to be played in the gray area.
For sure.
Rich people continue to stay rich because they have great attorneys and great CPAs. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, you're not trying to skirt the law. You're just trying to work within the law and the framework that's provided, to reduce taxes. So
and this is go ahead.
Yeah, so from a structural standpoint, and it's funny because, the 5 or 6 Jersey Mikes, kind of owners that I spoke to, all of them have an LLC. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, that's great. You set up an LLC tomorrow for whatever, but it doesn't necessarily alleviate you from any level of tax burden. It's not a great transferal of wealth. You've basically created a company where you're 100% responsible for the taxes that are being paid. You could have done that without the LLC.
Okay, and so I asked that question knowing what my follow-up question was going to be because I started the Gingrich Group in 2017. Okay. I literally just had a conversation with a lawyer, CPA, last week for the first time about I did everything through LegalZoom, yada, yada, yada. I don't necessarily recommend that because it didn't teach me anything, right? And I'm not saying that it's bad. I just wish that I would have had this conversation 3 years ago.
You should have called me.
I probably should have called you, right? But we'll talk a little bit about it now. We'll talk off air too. But he was like, John, you need to be taxed as an S corp, and I was like, so. Whether that's good or bad or whatever, he was like, this is why, because now you're paying self-employment tax based on everything that you brought into the Gingrich Group versus you're going to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And then you're not going to pay self-employment. You're going to pay self-employment taxes on that. But then the rest of it, you're not going to pay that 15% or whatnot. And I was like, dude, well, this $300 phone call or whatever just saved me about 10 grand.
Correct.
So why didn't I do this 3 years ago?
Yeah, so where the level of sophistication moves on, from there. And my business is a little different because, essentially I have a general partnership.
Right.
Right, but we also have potentially an operating company or a wink management company that essentially at some point removes itself from the Jersey Mikes ownership, and we're paying the management company for the management of the Jersey Mikes. But the extra level, and it's funny when I say this because this took me a while. It's taken me a number of calls with the CPA just to make sure that I understand, I know the process, but then we added in the third component with the family limited partnerships, and the family limited partnerships essentially
going over that too.
Own everything.
Right.
So everything that I own, everything that I start goes into the family limited partnership, which has a very easy transition, as we get to a certain point in life. But that's also, what I'm building for the kids is the family limited partnership. This is the operating entity where as soon as I'm gone, they step right into these businesses that I've created, and we don't have any hiccups. There's no, hey, you're getting 20%. It's just a family limited partnership. Have at it.
Exactly. Oh, man. And my mind, when you talk about YouTube, I'm a YouTube junkie.
Yeah.
And normally I'm like, I don't know if follow Gary Vaynerchuk or Grant Cardone, and these guys. Those are guys that occupy a lot of my time, but I also go down the rabbit hole of just like where that video leads me to, right? Came across this lawyer from Utah or whatever that was started to talk about that family limited partnership, and I was like, my mind was blown.
Utah is one of the few states that you can actually set up big ones.
Okay.
Because most family limited partnerships, I believe they have a shelf life. Don't trust me on that one.
So yeah, I don't.
But I think it's either Utah or Montana have ones that run into damn near perpetuity. Where
Right.
if you got land or something, you put it in there and
Sure.
it doesn't have to be distributed. Yeah.
Well, so I was like, okay, this intrigued me enough to where, and keep in mind, my sister is a CPA and is the CFO of Susan G. Komen, and like so,
Nice.
like
Awesome.
really, like I trust her when it comes to like that type of stuff, right?
Now, is she a black and white CPA where she sees it very clear?
So that's the thing.
Because there's different types of CPAs.
Absolutely, right? There's no doubt about it. And I would say she's more black and white. I live in a world of gray. Like my whole life has been a world of gray.
Right.
Whether you're a Republican or Democrat, I'm a.
Oh, there's a lot of exactly.
You know, like I'm a.
Give me the issue and
Right,
I'm
I can
somewhere in
see it
between.
both ways.
Right.
You know, or at least I'm going to try. In my mind, I'm going to try and see it both ways.
Yeah.
Whether I do or not, who knows? Right? I've got my own biases, just like everybody else.
Exactly.
But my sister, whenever we would be doing my taxes, and she'd say, "Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this?" I'd be like, "Well, I mean, yeah, I took a vacation, but I took a vacation.
Still working.
Yeah, I mean, it was with my client, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, you tell me what you think. I'm going to tell you what I think. You're going to tell me how much risk there is, and then I'm going to make the decision, right?
very great.
She would, no, that is not. She's more black and white. That would not be a business expense.
Oh, that's a guaranteed
That-
yes
yeah.
in my world.
What's that?
That's a guaranteed yes.
Right.
Clients are involved? Absolutely.
Yeah, so I am very much like, hey, I can make a real big case for this. But in my mind, I can make a case for anything.
Anything.
I could literally make a case for anything. Oh, I needed to go get this ice cream. Well, you know.
On the way, I took 2 phone calls.
Exactly, right?
And
Like,
I closed a deal, negotiated. Absolutely.
I literally think that I could write the world off, right? Now,
all right, so
I?
how are you
But-
keeping up with all these receipts?
Yeah, but see, I'm not. Like, that's the
Oh,
thing.
John,
I'm not, right? I'm not.
Then
But
you
so-
might need to stay in the black and white.
So I am no, that's the whole point of this conversation was like, hey, I need to get my ass in gear as far as like all of this stuff is concerned, because right now I've got a business account, right, that I just that's what I use as my receipt, right, which is not the way to do it, but they know, like when I swipe the
it's
credit card, it
tracking
just keeps
everything.
my
Correct.
record, right. I went to where I know there's no more entertainment, which was like I wrote off so much entertainment back in the day.
Well,
I mean,
there's a reason it went away.
yeah, for sure. There's
I mean, in my world, it ended the days of being in Cowboy Stadium in a suite,
Yeah,
and
right.
Stars, Mavs games. I mean,
Right.
that all went away.
sure.
Golf went away in my world.
Yeah, it literally was, because in residential real estate, the people that you talk to, you end up selling them houses because everybody wants to talk about real estate. And so all
Yep.
my friends, whether they thought it or not, like I was out there, we would talk real estate. Little did they know, I wasn't doing it on purpose, but then they viewed me as like the professional in that world. So I would be, every time I went out to have some drinks or whatever with anybody else, it was written off.
There
Literally.
was, but there's always an
Every time.
opportunity.
Yeah, my sister would say, like, John, that's a lot of like entertainment. I'd be like, yeah, every single time I go out, real estate gets brought up. So I think that, yeah, let's write it off. So I don't know if that's the right way or wrong way of doing things, but ultimately the call last week was because I need to get everything organized to where like I can set it up the correct way. I don't know what the correct way is yet, but
Yeah.
I want to figure that out.
We can talk off air.
All right, I dig it.
I got
Anyway,
I got a guy.
You got a guy.
Yeah, and everybody needs a guy.
I need,
You know?
before I used to think, wait, this phone call is going to cost me $1,000. I don't even I have $2,000. You're going to tell me to spend 1,000 of it on this guy that's going to plan out this? I'll figure it out myself. I'll watch a YouTube video.
This was essentially the concept that you just brought up is why I left my former company to chase this consulting deal.
Okay.
Because the idea was this consulting arrangement where you had this kind of consortium group of CPAs and attorneys that all work together. You know, because I always joke. I mean, my buddies on this hunting deal are like, well, you got an attorney, that's a buddy, just call him. I'm like, no, but yeah, we're buddies. But as soon as he picks up the phone, he hits that magic button.
Yeah.
And then it's always in life, especially with CPAs and attorneys, there probably needs to be some coordination between the two. And that's a phone call I don't want to be a part of because now I got two people
of them. Yeah.
hitting the button at the same time. And
Right.
if I'm not on the phone call, there's no one to control what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
I mean, they could be talking about hunting for
sure.
10 minutes
Yeah.
on my dime.
On your dime.
I mean, when I worked in my dad's law office, I mean, it was broken down into, 12 segments.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if it's like a 6-minute conversation, I look at my little chart and I write down, how
Yeah,
much
how much it was.
And like, oh my God,
Yeah.
You know, and that could have just been calling a secretary going, hey, I'm going to bring some documents over, you know, in the next hour.
Yeah. And that was my point. But and maybe you can convince me or enlighten me otherwise, but I would bet those $1,000 or $500 or $300 phone calls that I passed on cost me.
They did.
I don't know, tens of thousands, maybe up to $100,000. I feel like, because of how I feel like.
What's the cost of being cheap?
No,
I mean, I joke
infinite.
about
I mean,
the only thing I spent money on in life were my suits. You know, because they were a true representation of just me walking out of the house every day.
Right.
They said a statement, and it kind of came with my personality. The whole thing worked. You know, but there's so many other times where I'm inherently cheap.
Right.
You know, I'll spend money on some stupid shit on Amazon. Oh yeah,
sure.
Anything that you want in life is on Amazon,
Yeah,
whether
no
I
doubt.
need it or not.
Yeah.
For $14.99, I'm pulling the trigger.
Sure. Yeah.
You
Show
know,
up at your door.
But I'm just cheap.
And then you forget what you ordered, right?
Yeah,
You're like,
completely. But then it's like Christmas when you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
hell yeah, man! I can't wait to lose this.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you said, I missed what you said right after that, though. You said after.
Oh,
the
I'm
Amazon,
just
you're
inherently cheap.
Right.
You know,
so
I'm always. I just hate spending money.
So would you take now you would take these lawyer phone calls?
Spend it.
Right. But before you're 25, 30 years old, are you spending
No,
that
you
money?
couldn't afford it.
And that's the thing. So
You
I
couldn't
was
afford
caught
it.
in the okay, I need to figure it out myself, or I need to spend money I don't have.
Yeah, good advice was. And looking back on that in hindsight, you should have spent the money that you didn't have and figure out how to make it up. You know, on the costs that you saved and taxes or whatever.
Okay, so on that note, you said off air right before we went on.
Yep.
You said the worst thing I ever did was be debt free. What?
Oh God.
Well, yeah, I know we've been going for a while, but I want to know.
Yeah, so we'll
because I feel like that can. I know we're moving on, but I feel like that can transition from the I don't have any money to hey, I've got some excess money, but like that was a bad decision to be debt free.
Yeah. So, you know, at some point being a broke college kid, you know, it was funny. My first weekend at University of Texas at Austin, I'm 20 years old. I'm walking out of the bookstore, walking out of Bevo's on Guadalupe. There's
you're a Longhorn?
buddy, I went to 6 colleges. Come
Okay.
on. Yeah. There's not many places I didn't go, but
Okay.
that's a totally different podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm walking out, and there's a reporter for the Austin News standing there right in front of me.
Okay.
She's like, hey, can you look in the bottom of your bag? And so, of course, you know what's in the bottom of those bags? It's like 12 credit card applications.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know, at that point, I was already a stupid 20-year-old whose credit score was probably 520.
Yeah.
You know, maxed out the one credit card that I did have. And so I go on some tirade. Well, I make it on the weekend news.
Okay.
You know, so this is before Facebook. I'm running into people on campus. They're like, oh, man, I saw you on television. You're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
Man, I might have smoked pot since then.
Yeah, right.
But no, you get into that position where, you know, the wife and I made, you know, a vow to each other that before we got married, both of us would be debt free.
Okay.
You know, and it's hard to do. You know, my dad had paid for college, you know, so I didn't have that debt. But, you know, we're about to have a kid, and, you know, we just wanted to say to each other we weren't carrying all this debt. You know, so to some extent, I always liked the idea of being debt free when you have the ability. But it was so weird when we finally got to debt free. It was about the same time that I was trying to build a house in Sunnyvale.
Okay.
You know, finally made enough money to kind of move where I wanted to, but I hadn't used credit in so long that I had no credit.
Gotcha.
Like the credit score was fine,
Right.
but I didn't have any revolving credit.
Right.
You know, and a buddy of mine who's a mortgage broker, he's like, dude, I'm going to give you some advice, and this is going to sound very terrible. He said, but you've got a Sears credit card, don't you? I'm like, yeah, that I used about every 8 years when one appliance goes out. He's like, you've got to go to Sears every single month and buy something. I'm like, what do you mean something? He's like, something.
Some tools, whatever.
And so every month I'm going into Sears and spending $15 just so that I can make the recurring payment.
Right.
Just so I have. How bizarre is that in
crazy?
a world of like I'm 100% cash.
That makes
House is paid for, cars are paid for, and yet my biggest issues are the fact that I have no revolving credit.
That's crazy.
I mean,
That's
now
crazy.
you can look at my net worth,
Right.
but the only thing that they base my credit score on is revolving credit in relationship to
Right.
overall credit.
To me, that is mind
John,
blowing.
I just downgraded my house.
Right.
Right? Just sold a house. I had to pay cash for the new one.
Really?
I had to pay cash for the new one because I couldn't get a loan because I hadn't worked in 2 years. Annual income, Zero. No salary.
Right.
Couldn't get a loan. So I had, and look, the whole idea is to get flush with cash so that I,
But here you are, you've got this stockpile of cash. But like, I don't know if you wanted to pay cash or like.
I did not.
Right. So you didn't want to pay.
It was a terrible decision.
Right.
To pay off the house. Now, I will say this. It gave me the 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
To kind of sit around without a care in the world.
Right.
Sales aren't great.
It's just so crazy to me, man.
It was the level of comfort that I really needed at that point in time when I tried to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up.
What do you think that underwriter's thinking when they're like, even if I wanted to approve this loan, I couldn't? Just because
Buddy, none of my friends would take it.
Yeah.
I mean, I called 3 of my buddies.
Yeah.
One owns his own mortgage company.
Yeah. He's like,
they won't even talk to you.
It's like the guidelines just, I can't do it.
It's not going to happen.
And
they're all laughing because they know exactly
know
what I'm saying.
Right.
So instead, right, I've got to have 6 months of income, which even owning my own business, you're not taking out a consistent salary as if you're an employee.
Right.
So I don't know, maybe a year from now, I go back in and I do some
cash out refi or something.
75, 25 cash out, and I'm like, dude, this is terrible too. Because now it's a higher interest rate on a cash out refi. I'm like,
yeah.
But it's
and probably a year from now, they're not going to be interest rates at 3%.
People should be lining up to give me.
I know.
But yet they gave me the loan on the Jersey Mikes with no income. I can't get a home loan on a house already paid for.
It's wild, man. It's
crazy. Incredible.
It's crazy, man. Well, so here's the thing. I want to wrap it up. I don't want to wrap it up.
Oh, I know.
But ultimately, I think
I got a workout to get to.
Yeah,
I'm going to go torture myself.
Oh man. So we're getting on that. But so ultimately, it was awesome. I enjoyed it. We'll do it again. Man, it was great reconnecting.
So I do want to finish with one of my favorite stories, and let's see if you remember it.
Okay.
So one of the few games that I showed up at, Tim and I are sitting in the dugout. John Jacobus is playing catcher.
Okay.
All of a sudden, Tim and I look out, and I don't know whether Tim and I were just bullshitting and not paying attention to the game. All of a sudden, we look up, and the 2 coaches from the other team are literally getting in a fist fight with each other.
Where was this? Is in Lake Highlands, I think.
I think it was Lake Highlands.
Okay. Yeah.
So all of a sudden, we got 2 coaches that are kind of arguing that turns into a fist fight, and then all of a sudden, Tim and I are watching this circus, and then John Jacobus, in his catching gear, is getting right in the middle of it. I don't think you were trying to break it up. I think you were trying to rough both of them up.
You know why I was pissed off at that?
Because they forfeited the game.
Yes. So they
wanted to keep playing.
But there's a reason why. So I had knee surgery. I tore my ACL junior year. This was the summer after my junior year. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time that anybody, I used to love playing catcher. Shortstop was great. It was fun. But
so it was the first time you've been behind the plate since?
First time I'd been behind the plate since. And these guys, I don't even remember what they were arguing about. I just remember one of the coaches went to argue with the umpire. And then the other coach went to argue what I thought was with the umpire.
With the other coach.
And then he turns around and all of a sudden the other coach is in a chokehold by the other coach, not by the umpire. And then they forfeited the game, and I was pissed off.
Yeah, you were pissed.
I wanted to catch. It was like 2 innings in, and I was really So I remember that.
Like I said, John. I mean, the fact that I'm here today is truly because I saw so much of myself in you. Yeah. So much of you and me, or however that goes, man. But I truly respect what you've accomplished, what you're continuing to try to accomplish. Mm-hmm. I mean, so much of for me, man, is just keep moving forward.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
I mean, for me, it's not even necessarily setting a goal, but just trying to keep an idea and a fresh perspective of, hey, not only do I want to get here, but, I don't want to trample anybody in the process.
For sure. Man, and I appreciate that. I really do. It means a lot because there are maybe a handful of people that made a true impact in my life, and they're all associated with sports. Right. And even though, I'll say this, where you might – not a knock, you might not fit in that 5,
right?
But you're right there, and I think it's only because there's a matter of time, right? We didn't spend enough time with each other. But I would say in your short amount of time, you made a bigger impact just from literally like how you, like the outlook that you portrayed, whether the way you walk, the way you talk, and maybe it was not thinking about this until you said it, like that's. Like I saw myself in you, or the vice versa thing.
I took much more of an interest in you than you heard my speech.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only 2 or 3 of you in here, and the rest of you are pussies. I think that's exactly my hotel room conversation.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the exact.
But it was true. It was just a bunch of pussies.
Yeah, and I mean, I like a lot of those guys.
It's fine.
But-
Great guys.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to go to war with them. I didn't want them on my team.
I do agree with you that like it was something where it was, and we'll wrap it up. But it was something where I was like, man, the level of intensity was not the way I would have wanted it to be. But I'll say this. So I don't know if you know this, but I coached for 4 years.
Okay.
And that was middle school, which was terrible. But that was my biggest deal about that my athletes that I had is I just didn't feel like they gave a crap. And that was hard for me.
Yeah.
To where like to the point where I knew I had to leave when I called the kid, so, like called him a name. Not like said, this is crazy, stupid, you shouldn't be doing this. Like we're like, you are this. Yeah. And I was like, I gotta go.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up, man.
Wow.
We could cover 2 hours on coaching.
Yeah, for sure. All right. It was great. All right, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
All right, bye.